Hello and welcome to the Winchester Archives, a supernatural podcast. I'm Ed,
I'm Brooke.
and today we'll be discussing Season 2, Episode 3, Bloodlust. But before we do, here's a quick spoiler warning. As always, we'll be connecting dots across the entire series. So if you're watching Supernatural for the first time or have not finished the series, consider this your heads up. Also, as well, an explicit content warning. We are adults talking about an adult show that deals with dark and sensitive topics. So expect adult language, mature discussion, and dark humor. And also, you can find us on Upscrolled at Winchester Archives Pod, as well as YouTube and Patreon at Winchester Archives Podcast. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff to help us keep growing our community of archivists. We really appreciate it. Yeah, that was
Mhm.
a lot all at once. I'm out of breath now.
You're getting, good at just saying it.
Yeah, I'm getting faster and faster every time. Eventually, I'm just going to start like speaking so quickly you can't even understand my plug.
You know what? I'm gonna have to change up the script one day on you, and
Just
then
mess
you'll
me up.
yeah. Yep.
Even
Alright.
though that's basically all autopilot at this point anyway.
Mhm. Very true. And you ad lib, it's not like we really read what's on the screen.
hmm
But anyway, I can get into the episode specs and synopsis now. So this episode aired on October 12th, 2006. It was written by Sarah Gamble and directed by Robert Singer. And the
Whoop.
supporting cast is Sterling K. Brown as Gordon Walker. With the Impala fixed up, Dean is eager to go out on a hunt and is very excited to get out. They are chasing after two decapitations as well as several cattle slaughters. So they're thinking it's like a satanic ritual type
Mhm.
thing. And while out on this hunt, they meet a new hunter named Gordon. He seems a bit off, but Dean is liking his company. Though Sam finds out through Ellen he's a good hunter, but not a good person to like mix with, which overall turns out to be true when Gordon says repeatedly that everything in this job is just black and white and there aren't any shades of gray. When Sam attempts to prove him wrong, as the monsters they are chasing in this episode don't want to hurt humans at all, in the end, we realize Dean is not okay and they've made a real enemy out of Gordon.
Oh, yeah.
So we start off this episode in Red Lodge, Montana, with a girl running through the woods and she obviously trips and falls.
Yeah, as you do with, 80s horror movie cliches like this.
Yep.
That was
But
all I was thinking this entire opening scene. I'm like, "Man, this is ripped straight out of, like, Halloween or, like, Friday the 13th," you know? Like, it's, like, very, like, that kind of, like,
Mhm.
girl running through the woods and then falling and then getting killed kinda thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. But she gets back up and she keeps running and she hides behind a tree. But of course she's found and then she's just decapitated by a hook.
I thought it was, like, a hooked blade. Like, I don't know, like, because like, being
Yeah,
by a hook itself seems very hard to cut through someone's head with a hook.
it
Like
looked
one of, like,
like
those sickle blades, you know? Like the crescent moon blades.
yes. I was thinking of, like, Game of Thrones, the Dothraki, what they have, like, the hook
Yeah,
blades.
exactly. Yeah, the hook blade or like the moon blades, yeah.
Yes, it'd be very easy to, like, slit their throat, but I don't know about the whole head.
Well, like we've said before, decapitating, like, the way they do in this show is just not physically possible. Like, you're not clean swiping through everyone's head with one
No.
like, that's like a stereotype of this show that's like 'cause it's just 1, it's not as brutal as it would be in real life. You'd have to, like, hack at that bitch.
Yeah, that's true. I had to move my mic because that green screen was driving me nuts. Anyway, yes, it's very true, but we have to give them grace because they only have, like, what, 1 second to get it back on to get it
Oh,
on
yeah.
camera.
And also, yeah,
Um
you don't wanna sit there and watch someone hack away at someone's neck.
Oh, no, because they also show that in Game of Thrones, and it's very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
That's why it's on HBO and not on, like, cable television.
Mhm.
But anyway, back to Supernatural. We now see a super cool scene. I love it because you hear Back in Black by AC/DC, and you just know something, like, epic is coming. It's just the road, and then in the distance, we start seeing the Impala just coming. But I'm thinking this must be a time jump, right, from the first episode? Because at the end of the last episode, we see Dean rebuilt the car and then smashed it.
Yeah. It has to be a time jump because there's no way that car is fixed up and running like now if it's, like, been a week.
This had to been some time,
Mhm.
but it's alright. The Impala is back. Dean is very weirdly in a good mood. Sam points it out, though, and Dean's just like, "You know what? I have my car. I have a case, so things are looking up." Sam says Red Lodge is another 300 miles away, and Dean is super happy 'cause that means he gets to drive his car for another 300
Mhm.
miles.
I love that.
Me too. And now with the scene transition, they are at a local police station pretending to be journalists to get more details from the sheriff. And the sheriff doesn't think there's a connection between the dead cattle and the two dead women. The sheriff says that cattle mutilation isn't real because when a cow dies, it bloats and just like splits open. And he says it can look real surgical. So he's like, it's definitely not connected.
Yeah, and, basically, this sheriff is the best sheriff ever, character-wise, like, his look is the perfect sheriff character, it made me so happy, that
Yes.
mustache is epic,
Had a
love it.
good mustache.
Yeah, he had a very much the vibe of a sheriff too, like, it was so good. But also, I just wanted to touch on this since, like, this entire episode is basically vampire knowledge that we've already discussed in previous episodes, so there's not much for
Mhm.
me lore-wise to talk about. But since they decided to mix in cattle mutilations, I kinda wanted to touch on that because it's fun. It's an interesting
Mm,
thing.
okay.
That's a weird sentence. Cattle mutilation is not fun, but you get my point.
Yeah, for, like,
Um,
conspiracy and lore and yeah.
yeah. But yeah, since cattle mutilation was brought up, I wanted to talk about that real quick. But it's really interesting because it basically was a phenomenon reported from like the 1960s to like the 1990s. Around that time was like when it majorly was reported. But it's basically where livestock, usually cows, sometimes horses, are found dead in the field with surgical looking cuts. And they're usually drained of blood and sometimes missing sensitive things like eyes, ears, tongues, genitals, and even the rectum.
Oh.
Because of that, there's some interesting theories that sprung up about it. Mostly, the first one is basically the one that Sam alludes to in this conversation of satanic cult, which became a popular scapegoat for pretty much anything bad happening in the
Mhm.
80s because of the satanic panic around
Yup.
that time. So that was one of the first main theories of why this is happening is a bunch of cultists going around and like slaughtering animals for blood and sacrifices.
Definitely. That's still a thing
Yeah,
today
that's still
too.
a common blame for things. The
Mhm.
second thought was aliens, because there was reports from farmers around this time claiming to have seen strange things the nights before their livestock were killed. And then one of the first cases was a horse named Snippy that was found with its head and neck skinned and defleshed,
Oh,
leaving it just bone from basically the neck up. Everything else was normal, just the neck up was just
what?
bone. Yeah, it's real weird. So basically the theory was that it could have been extraterrestrials abducting the horse and then dropping it back off like that.
Uh,
The more like normal theory, the less fun theory is that it was struck by like lightning and it just like vaporized, like burned
oh.
through its, the top half of it and then it died. And then
Ah.
scavengers basically picked
Yeah.
it apart, which makes the most sense. But
The cows and the aliens, you can picture that image with, like, the saucer with the
yes,
beam coming down and the cow being lifted up.
and that's exactly where this started becoming popular is because of that. Because of this
Mhm.
phenomena, people started, like, imagining aliens doing this and, like, what would that look like? Okay, well, they would abduct them. How would they abduct them? With a tractor beam, and, that's where that
Mhm.
famous image of, like, the upside down cow getting pulled into a spaceship comes from. Because a lot of those farmers reported, like, weird lights or, like, strange things, happening, and then, they're yeah, they come up the next morning and their cattle's just, like, drained of blood and missing half of its body.
But, yeah, I would think that's weird.
Yeah. Another fun one, and this one's a little bit more like supernatural, is the chupacabra is another, one that was blamed for this, which was it kinda combines in together with some of the alien theories as this is the chupacabra is, like, thought to be an alien-like creature. Chupacabras are literally mean goat sucker in Spanish. It's said to be like a small dog-like reptilian alien creature that comes up and drinks the blood at night. But a lot of, like, more mundane theories about, like, what the sightings of chupacabras was were, like, dogs with mange, which, like, could make them lose their fur and become a little bit more, like, erratic, meaning it would look more like
Mhm.
a little tiny gremlin thing that was described.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense. That one
However The net what?
Mm, mm.
What were you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna say that, like, it could also just make sense that it was, like, another animal, whether it be a cryptid or otherwise.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
However, the sheriff in this scene explains basically exactly what the general scientific consensus is of what this phenomenon was, which is the animal dies of natural causes or some other reason, dies in the middle of the field at night, and then because of this, or during the day, but because of this, the body expands naturally, like we discussed before, with like the vampire stories.
Mhm.
And because of this, the body splits open, and those splits, I don't know if you've ever seen like something like that split, but
Mm-mm.
the way it splits, if something splits by like pressure like that, it tends to tear in a very like linear, like a very straight line as it tears.
Mm.
Meaning it would look kind of surgical because it would be like a very precise cut open because of the body expanding. And as for like the missing body parts, like like the eyes, the ears, those kind of things, basically explained as carrion feeding insects and other scavengers like vultures, things like that,
Mm.
tend to go for the easiest access point. And the easiest access
Yeah.
point is the softest tissue. The softest tissues happen to be things like eyes, ears, tongues, genitals, rectums, those kind of things. Easy access points for things to get
Mhm.
into. The next thing the sheriff says is that all the blood falls down due to gravity because that's how gravity works. And I love that he like is so condescending in this scene for about that. It's so funny to me. But
Mhm.
because of the blood coming out of those wounds, it either because of the gravity either soaks into the ground like the sheriff says, or it pools in other parts of the body, and then insects and the sun drying it up would make the blood go away. And because of
Mhm.
that, when the farmer finally realizes, "Oh, one of my cows is missing," they go out into the field and find it. It's probably already been sitting there for hours and hours. They had a bunch of time for insects and scavengers to they start picking away at this stuff, and then for the sun to dry up things. And then it looks like, "Oh, weird, this weird surgical cut," and then these organs were removed
Mhm.
very, like, cleanly. And, like, that's, like, the main crux of a lot of it, which I find, interesting. Again, it's the same kind of thing where it's like, I understand where people get these ideas from then,
Yes.
from these natural things, but it's really fun.
Yeah, definitely it is. And I'm sitting here thinking like, who knew we were a science podcast? But
I know, right?
also but also everything we discuss is also like a pseudoscience and it's always backed up by like some science as well.
Oh, yeah,
So,
like, all of this stuff is, this is, like, the fascinating part about all of this, about folklore in general, is that it's very interesting to see why people came up with things and how people came up with things, especially when we didn't understand a lot of things. It makes sense.
mhm.
Like, all of this stuff makes sense. The fact that they thought vampires did the things they did, and, like, they opened the caskets and they look fucking weird, it makes sense. It makes
Yep.
total sense, and it's really cool to see, like, the progression of, like, our knowledge of things and just progression of things in general like that. Fun.
Yes. I agree. It really is.
Now back to
Okay.
Supernatural. That was my one little interjection for the entire episode because everything else is
Ah,
just vampires.
true. All right, let's go. So now our brothers here are pretending to work at the coroner's office. They tell the guy that's in there that his boss needs him, and he's like, "He's back. He's on vacation." And they're like, "Yeah, well, he's back and he's pissed. So you better go." And he goes. So now they're looking around and they find the bin with head in it to see if there's any satanic markings on it, which there
Mhm.
isn't. Then Dean says they should look in the mouth to see if there's a moth in there, like in Silence of the Lambs.
Again, amazing. I love that Dean just constantly references pop culture and stuff like that. It's so
Mhm.
fun.
It
Um,
is.
it makes them feel very real because we would do that stuff too if we were in their scenario.
Yes.
And
Oh,
also, this entire time, Sam looks so uncomfortable. It's crazy.
yes,
He
he
clearly does not
does.
like messing with dead bodies.
No, I wouldn't either. I'd be like, "This isn't part of the job, actually."
I mean, it is, unfortunately.
It
A
is.
very large part of their job is getting rid of bodies.
Getting rid of them, not sticking your hand down their mouth.
True.
But Sam pushes, like, the bin over to Dean, and he's like, "Okay, go ahead." And then Dean pushes it over to Sam and says, "Put the lotion in the basket."
Again, amazing. It made me laugh so hard.
Same, because he says it in such a weird voice too, and
Mhm.
Sam, does the thing where he just gives him this look that he's not entertaining
Yeah,
it.
he's not amused.
Yes. But Sam gives in and checks and doesn't see anything, and he's like, "Nope, nothing's here." And then Dean's like, "Well, wait, look under the lip again." And he pushes on the gums and a retractable tooth comes out like a fang,
Mhm.
like the vampires have.
Yeah, so we now know that the opening scene was actually a hunter getting rid of a vampire, which is, a nice
Mhm.
twist.
They're now in a local dive bar and trying to bribe the bartender for more information about vampires.
Mhm.
And I'm like, there's clearly one here in the bar with them because the camera keeps panning over to him
Mhm.
and he's gone when the brothers leave.
Yeah. It's one of those, very good setups of like, "Oh, this
Mhm.
person's clearly the bad guy listening in right now."
Yes. And now we see him and he's following Sam and Dean. But as we know, the Winchesters are too smart and they know some they're being followed. So they push this man up against the building and he's like, "Oh my god, I'm not a vampire, but I killed him."
Yeah, he was, like, basically had to, they were, like, threatening him with a knife and made him
Yes.
actually show his teeth to make sure there wasn't any fangs hidden up in there.
Yep. So this is another hunter. He said he met John once and says John was a great hunter and that Sam and Dean fill his shoes from what he hears.
Yeah, and that they're big shoes to fill, but they're doing a good job.
Mhm. And Dean questions how he knows so much about his family. And this new hunter says word travels fast between hunters. And then he goes, "But you know that." And Dean is like, "Actually, we don't know that." So
Yeah.
then he says John didn't teach them very much.
Mhm.
And it's like, it's John taught them a lot about hunting and completing the job, but he did not teach them like the social aspect and like making friends.
Yeah, it's really I like this about Supernatural too, 'cause it's really interesting, and also it's a surrogate for the audience too, and the way that Sam and Dean are very isolated with their upbringing into
Mhm.
it. The way they hunt is very like, "Oh, we're the only ones that know about this really, other than, like, 5 people maybe," you know?
Mhm.
But there's actually, like, a whole network of hunters that work together and, like, talk and do all this
Mhm.
stuff, which I think is, like, really cool world building, and also, again, as Nat since they don't know about that, we get to learn with them, which is fun.
Yes. Because now
Kinda like
this
this
is
different society, basically.
Yeah, because this is the 2nd episode in a row where they're questioning how hunters know so much.
Mhm. Because they just had the one, with the bar and everything with them.
Yep. So, yeah, they need to start branching out, which they kinda do.
Yeah. More common profession than they expected.
But, yeah, this man says that he's killed the last 2 vampires, and he doesn't actually want their help at all. He's like, "I've been working on this for over a year,
Yeah.
leave."
He's like, "This is my job. I wanna finish my job."
So now we see a security officer named Conrad searching around for the noises he was hearing.
Mhm.
Turns out, though, Conrad is a vampire, and this new hunter we met is trying to kill him, but he's getting severely beaten up by Conrad, like punching. He's about to get his head sawed off, as in the hunter. But then we see our brothers come to save the day, and Dean ends up sawing the head off of the vampire instead and was like way too eager to do so. The
Yeah, it was
new
one of those moments where just like, "Ooh."
Yes, because the new hunter in the background is like, "Oh my god, that's so great. We gotta go out and celebrate." And then Sam is looking at him like horror struck, like, "What?"
Yeah, this is one of those scenes that I was also like, if this was in modern times, like, if it was to ma this show was made today,
Mhm.
that scene would totally have been shown of the head
Oh.
getting sawed off. But I was expecting it to cut to it just because I'm so used to, like you said, like
Mhm.
Game of Thrones or other, like, shows that are, like, a little bit more edgy in terms of being showing the gruesomeness nowadays,
Mhm.
that it's, like, seeing that censorship of just, like, the blood splatter, it's very artsy, but it's also, like, very, like, censored. But it's still, like,
Yeah,
gruesome because of the reaction.
exactly. Because nothing is on, like, cable anymore. Like, if it's on, like, a streaming platform, we pay for it so it can be, like, rated R if we wanted it to be.
Exactly.
So,
It was
like,
just one of those things where it could
yeah.
really tell the difference, you know?
You definitely can. So they are at the bar, and this hunter that we just met and Dean are celebrating while Sam is sitting there brooding, which is not unlike him.
Yeah,
But Dean tells him to, like, lighten up, and the other hunter agrees saying, "Lighten up, Sammy," and then Sam, like, is like, "He is the only person who can call me that."
love that.
And then he's like, "Okay, okay, Sam."
He's like, "My bad."
Mhm, yeah. He's like, "I've only known you as Sammy, my bad." Because
Mhm.
Dean doesn't say anything else. And then he says that Sam needs to learn to have fun on the job, and Sam is just like, "Yeah, but decapitating somebody isn't what I call a good time." So he's like, "I'm just gonna go back to the motel." So Dean throws the car keys at Sam and says, "Remind me to beat the buzzkill out of you next time." So now Dean is telling this man a story about his youth and when he decided it was time to embrace the hunter's life when he was 16 years old. And the guy he's talking to now says he was 18 when a vampire got his sister and he couldn't explain it to his family, so he left
Mhm.
home. He did eventually find the vampire that got his sister and he killed it. Although, when you're listening to this dialogue, you know there's more to this story
Yeah,
because he even says he can still see his sister how she was.
yeah.
So I was like, is he a vampire? Is she a vampire now that, like, he refuses to kill because it's his sister? Like,
Oh, my first thought was that he went and, like, killed her too.
and
Because
he's
this
just like,
guy, when
not.
he's talking about this stuff,
Mhm,
it's you can see the crazy in his eyes, man. I give the actor a lot of credit. He plays his character
mhm,
again. These actors are really good at what they do. But, like, he
yes,
had some crazy in his eyes that I was like, "Ooh, I don't like that." Like, he's
mhm,
getting too excited about them talking about killing things.
yeah, yeah, he is. Dean is opening up to him now about how it's been hard for him with his dad passing, and then he says he can't talk to Sam about it because he needs to stay strong, which is just bad because Sam has been trying to talk about
Yes.
it.
It's so dumb.
Sam wants to talk about it.
Yes. Like, stop trying to be strong for nothing.
Like, break down together. It'll be
Toxic
fine.
masculinity, man.
I know. That's
Just
another thing.
communicate.
That's also what John taught them.
Yes. Very true.
But yeah, this man's advice is to just shove it down and use that anger as motivation to do your job. Big yikes.
Yes. Big yikes.
And I also think, like, this is how mistakes are made
Yes.
because you're not thinking clearly and you're running on emotion only.
Yeah, if
Bad
you're
things are
running
gonna
on only
happen.
anger, you're gonna fuck up a lot if you're running on only anger.
Mhm. Yes. So now back to Sam. He's calling Ellen to ask her about this man. His name is Gordon Walker. Ellen says he's a great hunter, but then she says Hannibal Lecter is also a great psychiatrist.
Yeah. Basically implying that he's good at what he does, but he's not a great person still. Just like Hannibal Lecter is good at what he does, but not a great person still.
Yes. The next Silence of the Lamb
Yes.
mention. It took
3 in
me
a
a
row.
s it took me a second because I was like, "That is not what I wrote," but I must have heard it wrong.
Yeah, yeah, you put it down originally as just like Gordon is a great hunter and a great but needs a great psychologist, which is also an accurate statement. Like, that is an accurate assessment, but
Yeah,
not quite what was said.
I forgot to watch with the closed captioning on because we've been watching Traitors, and you won't let me watch Traitors with the closed captioning on, so I forgot to turn it back on
I
when I was
hate closed
watching
captions.
this.
Closed captions are the devil.
It's only because you have ADHD.
Yes. It's only
Okay.
because I have to sit there and read every word instead of actually watching the show then.
Mhm. Yeah. But then she tells him, like, "If Gordon's working a job, just leave him alone." But she won't explain more. And I'm just like, "Can't y'all explain anything?"
Because these people are there for the drama, Brooke. It's for tension building. But yes, I agree that as a character, as like a person, Tell him why he needs to leave her alone.
Him alone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell him yeah. Tell Sam why he needs to leave Gordon alone and let him do his thing. Because,
Mhm.
like, we could have saved the rest of this episode.
Yeah, instead of just, like, 'cause Sam even is, like, questions her on it, and she's just like, "Yep, just leave him alone. Trust me." It's like, "Okay,
Okay.
John 2.0."
Yes. Like, someone just communicate clearly what they know.
Yes, like, give me a little gossip you've heard around the bar or something so I know why. But now going back to Dean, I think he's starting to understand that something is just not all the way there with this guy. Because
Mhm.
Gordon is talking about how the job is black and white, and if it's a monster, you kill it. Dean says Sam wouldn't agree, to which Gordon says Sam is not like them. And I could tell by the acting that this makes Dean uneasy.
Mhm.
And either way, he's either trying to figure a way out of it or he is giving in to what Gordon is saying. And I couldn't really tell which way, like maybe he was just conflicted.
I think it's that. I think it's a little bit of A and B. You know, it's a little bit of him being like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to be fully like you, like, in the same boat as you because you're being" again, when the way Gordon describes these, like, kills and, like, the stuff, he sounds like he's getting, like, turned on by it. Like, he's, like,
Mhm.
really into murdering things, especially, like, monsters, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, they're all evil. They don't it doesn't matter. They're not
Mhm.
human." And it's like and also I think that the this episode, whether intentionally or not, which I assume it was somewhat intentionally, it is kind of like talking about like racism and like in general,
Mhm.
like dehumanization of people because this is how you do it, right? Once
Yeah.
they all become monsters and not humans, you can just slaughter them and it's not a big deal, right?
Mhm.
And we've seen
Yeah.
that throughout history, like in many different instances of like genocide and other racist things and other
Yeah.
things just because they are not human enough. They're not like you. They're not the same as us. It's all of those kind of dog whistles and those mindsets that caused humans and people to be monsters themselves. And that's what this, I think, is showing
Mhm.
too, because this whole episode is about showing that there is shades of gray in everything, including in monster hunting.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, a very poignant point that this is pointing out because a lot of the way they talk about it being black and white, there's no right or wrong. It's all right because because we're the good guy. And it's that kind of mindset that brings us into a lot of the chaos of the world.
Mhm. That's very true.
And the confliction and the eventual turn of Dean of in the end of the episode is a very much a thing of like showing that you have to like push past that and see those nuances, see those shades
Mhm.
of gray to be like good.
Yeah, exactly. Because we even saw this in season 1 with the other psychic guy because Dean was like, "Okay, we
Hmm.
gotta go kill him." And Sam was like, "This is a person." And Dean was like, "Well, a person that's murdered 2 people. So, like, we just gotta put him out." And Sam was like, "No."
Yeah, exactly. And
And
this is why like I like this episode a lot because like Dean is like understanding it more now because he also
mhm,
can see he has a good reflection of who he could be if he
mhm.
goes down this path in Gordon and he chooses to
Yeah.
not. And I think this is the start of that, of him being conflicted of like, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I fully agree. Is like, part of me does,
Yeah.
because that's how he was trained and that's how he grew up. And I think at the end of there's another like, I'm sorry, this is like kind of a long winded tangent, but the ending of the episode too, we'll get into a little bit too. But like, it's one of those things where it shows that Dean is growing and learning that
Mhm.
he has to unlearn a lot of the shit he grew up with, and that kind of ties back into what I was saying about like the whole racism and dehumanization thing that people do, that they have to
Mhm.
unlearn because it is taught. It's part of it's ingrained in society and it's ingrained in people from young ages that they have to actively unlearn.
Yep. That's very true. And I'm glad he's having that realization already.
Yeah, I thought this episode was later on in the season or the series. Again, it's one of those weird things. I'm surprised how early this was.
Yeah, me too.
I know that this happened. I remember this episode because I remember Dean finally learning about it because of the vampire group that fed on cows. I knew that was a thing, but it's not
Mhm.
a thing that I thought came so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. So now Sam is still at the motel. He's grabbing a drink from a vending machine outside. He hears
Mhm.
some rustling in the leaves, but he ignores it and goes back into his room. But he's on edge, and rightfully so, because there's someone in his room and they knock him out with a telephone.
Ow.
Yeah, ow. He's kidnapped and taken somewhere by a vampire named Eli. And a woman named Lenore tells Sam that they're not like other vampires because they don't kill humans and they don't drink their blood. She says they
Mhm,
feed on cows. And then she says it's quite disgusting, but
mhm.
it allows them to get by for survival. And she's like,
Yeah,
if humans die, the locals panic and then the hunters come looking for them.
yeah,
So they don't have to keep traveling place to place to place. They can kind of just sit still in one place for a while,
yeah.
which was also like the idea behind Twilight and why their vampires also don't feed on humans.
I mean, it makes sense. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Like, as a survival mutation, basically, you're trying to, like, force it into, like because it helps you survive. And also, the
Mhm.
entire time I wanna point out the entire time Sam is doing the thing that Dean does as well, where he's, like, trying to be, like, cocky and smug and be like, "Oh, but you're just all monsters, and, like, you're
Mhm.
lying. Why would you do that?" Like, blah, 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 blah. Like, just, like, trying to be like, "Oh, no, you're wrong." Because, like,
Mhm.
again, that's how they were raised. They were raised to be like, "These people are liars, they're monsters, they're evil, they're gonna kill you all, they need to die." And Sam
Yeah.
somewhat believes that too, but this whole conversation is really, convincing to him, mostly because she's like, "If we wanted you dead, you'd be dead."
Yes.
Like,
And, um, and you can tell he also doesn't fully believe in what he was
yeah.
saying.
Oh, yeah, it was bluster. You can tell that he's, like, faking it. He's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
but you're evil, man." Like, it's, like, very,
Mhm.
like, "I don't necessarily believe this, but I'm saying it because it makes me seem tough, and maybe it'll make me not die."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
But they tell Sam they're leaving town and they're
And
ask
again, he was just like, "Why would you tell me that?"
yeah, but they tell him basically they don't want him to follow and they need the other hunters to leave them alone as well. So they just let him go as
Mhm.
a sign of good faith. They let him go.
Yeah, without a scratch on him,
Yep.
other than, like, the mild concussion he got from being knocked out by a phone.
Yeah. Dita and Gordon are now in the motel room looking at a map about where the nest probably is. Sam gets back and sees Gordon and asks Dean if they can talk alone. So they go outside and Sam tells Dean he was at the nest and they let him go and they need to rethink the hunt and basically just retells him everything we just went over. Dean doesn't believe that what they told Sam is true and he says their job is to kill them. And Sam says their job is to kill evil things. And if they aren't killing humans, they are not evil, which is another morality thing that we can get into at a at another time, or we could get into it now, but, like, I was like, "Okay, if it's not human, they're everything else is, like, free range, I guess."
I mean, it's kind
Um,
of it's the unfortunate way that our nature works, and also just,
mm,
like, even humans are like that too, right? If it's against another
yeah,
human, it's like, that's even worse, but if you, like, kill a cow for food, we
mhm,
all do it kinda thing. Yeah,
yeah,
it's still, like, not great, but it's like, it's much more acceptable, right? Than
yeah,
if you're just, like, going around killing, your neighbor
yes, exactly.
and eating them, that would be a lot worse.
Yeah, Dean says they're all the same and they need to be exterminated.
Again, this is why I think this episode has a lot of parallels to, like I said, like, the dehumanization of people, because, like, that is a very pointed line of being like, "They're all the same," making someone a monolith, and
Mhm.
that is a bad thing, right? Because people aren't like that, and humans aren't like that, so why would monsters be like that?
Now Sam is accusing Dean of filling an empty hole of their dad with Gordon, and then he says it's an insult to John's memory. So
Ooh,
So Dean punches him in the face, Sam. He just full on. And I'm like, Sam's brain is not getting a break.
yeah, it's got fucking rocked again. Poor
Yes.
guy needs to go to the hospital.
Yep. Uh, but Sam says like Dean can punch him all he wants, but that doesn't change anything. or, like, it won't bring John back or something along those lines.
Mhm.
And they go back inside to see Gordon is not there, and he stole their car keys. So Dean had to hotwire the Impala.
And he was complaining. He's like, "I just got this thing fixed." And now he has to, like, hotwire it, meaning he's gonna have to fix it again.
Yep. They think Gordon went to the nest, so that's where they are headed. And I thought this was so interesting because Sam, he really didn't want to go there, but, he's going there to stop Gordon. But, like,
Mhm.
because of the stuff John has taught him how to do, he knows exactly where it is even though he was blindfolded.
Oh, yeah. I love this point where he's just like, "Oh, it's exactly 2 and a like, 4.5 minutes to pass the bridge," because I remember and it's like Dean was like, "How'd you know that?" "I counted." Like,
Yes.
dang. That's some spy stuff. Like, that's like I know that is,
Yeah.
like, some kind of, like, military training too, is, like, to do stuff like that, but it's just like, that's that's cool.
Yeah,
I don't
it
know if I would've
is.
thought to do that.
I probably would have been like, "Oh, we turned left and I remember the sound of a bridge, and eventually we turned
Yeah.
into a driveway." Like,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
but it's like, that's so vague, but yeah, Sam knew exactly where. But somehow from overhearing their conversation, that meant Gordon knew exactly where, but he was also narrowing it down anyway
No,
from,
I
like,
think
his map.
what it was Gordon, left with all of that, and I think he knew that they would go because eventually he's, like,
Mm.
parked on the side of the road and follows them at a certain point.
Oh, I didn't realize he followed them. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yep. So now we're back at the vampire's house. I don't want to call it a nest because they were literally in a house. Lenore is telling Eli that killing these three hunters won't change anything. So they just need to leave before sunrise. But Eli is like, they're killing us all. They killed Conrad. This is your family and you just want to leave.
Mhm,
But Lenore is just saying, like, we can't reason with them. There's more of them out there. We just need to leave and, like, start
mhm.
over.
Yeah, while Eli's like, "We should try might as well take him with us."
Yeah. He was like, if we're gonna die, we might as well take a few down with us. But
Mhm.
Lenore doesn't see it that way.
Yeah.
Sam is worried now about what Gordon and Dean are going to do when they get there. He really doesn't want the vampires to die. But Gordon is already there with a knife dipped in dead man's blood, and he stabs Lenore with it, which we remember previously. It basically makes them like immobile because it's like poison to them, but it
Yeah.
doesn't kill them.
Just hurts like a bitch.
Now we see, instead of killing her, he is torturing her to get more information. Like he's just
Yeah,
like
like
cutting her.
mhm.
And Sam,
Gruesome.
yes, it is gruesome. Sam is saying to put the knife down and to like step away. And Gordon is just like hell bent on killing Lenore, though, because he believes again there's no shades of gray. And then I had an aha moment and I was like, I knew it because Dean says the vampire that killed his sister deserved to die, but this one had nothing to do with that. And
Mhm.
then Gordon says that vampire didn't kill his sister, it turned her. So when he hunted down that vampire, he found his sister and he killed her too. And he says he didn't even blink an eye because she wasn't human anymore.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where I think this episode's really cool because, like, it really does, like, a whole flip of dynamics, which is really fun, and, like,
Mhm.
oh my god, like, that line is just like, "Jeez, this guy's a psychopath, man."
Yes. Like, if we wanna throw in another TV show, for example, of The Walking Dead, when people's family members died and were turned into zombies, they did eventually have to kill them because they would try to kill their family, like, they didn't recognize their family anymore, but
Yeah.
it was always every time it happens, it's like a conflict because 'cause they're like, "This is my mom, sister, husband, etcetera,"
Yeah.
and it takes them until they're being attacked to, like, pull the trigger.
Yeah.
So it's like this guy didn't even have to, like, wait. He was just like, "Oh, she's not human anymore. I'm just gonna take care of it."
Yeah. Which is just jeez, man.
Yes, exactly. It was just like, oh, made me shudder.
Mhm.
So And he's trying to say Dean and him are exactly the same, which is this is when I think he is losing Dean because
Yeah.
he's wrong. He couldn't be more wrong because at some point in the series, Sam loses his soul and Dean catches him drinking demon blood to get stronger. And Dean still doesn't kill him, even
Yeah.
though he does call him a monster for drinking demon blood, though. I do remember
Mhm.
that. But like,
Oh, yeah.
they're still brothers.
That's, like, the theme of this entire series, though, is that they will do everything for each other no matter what what bad thing they're doing or into right now.
Yes.
So, that is like you said, that is exactly where they're wrong, and I do think that this is where Dean finally makes the choice of, like, "Yeah, no, we're not the same because he wouldn't sit there and torture the hell out of this poor, like, girl, and then,
Oh, yeah, if Dean caught her and he thought she was a vampire killing people, he would have just killed her. He wouldn't have, like, tortured her for
yeah.
anything.
Not like this anyway.
No.
This is, like, sadistic torture. Like, this wasn't even just, like I know, like, like, I know I'm not trying to, like, make a distinction between, like, torture because torture is torture, but
Mhm,
it's, like, one of those things where, like, they've interrogated, like, demons and, like, like, hurt
mhm,
them to, like, get information and stuff, but, like, not like this. This is a very gruesome scene of just, like, a
mhm,
bunch of cuts, and he seems to like this. Like I
yes,
said, the dude, like, gets off to this, man. Like, it's weird.
mhm, yep. And now Gordon is trying to prove they're all the same, and he's like, "It doesn't matter if they eat cattle, they're still gonna crave human blood." So then he cuts Sam's arm and drops blood on her, and they all see, like, her fangs come out, and I'm just like,
And she kinda goes feral for a sec like, kinda just, like,
"Yeah."
trying to get at the blood.
But I'm just like, "Come on." She's only doing that because he's dropping blood on her and she's being poisoned. So, of course, she's gonna act this way if somebody's forcibly dropping blood on her. That doesn't mean she wants it.
Yeah, it's the kinda thing where, like, it's almost instinctual to some level for
Mhm,
vampires, it seems, that, like, they smell kinda like a blood like, the whole, like, blood in the water shark thing, even though, like, that's not
mhm.
quite how sharks work, but one of those things where, like, they once they smell the blood, they're like, oh, they kinda, like, go feral, like, they get that bloodlust. But, yeah,
It would
it's very, like, not fair of
it
a
would be
situation.
like if you kidnapped a person and didn't let them eat for days and they were, like, vegan, and then you give them a piece of chicken and they eat it, and you'd be like, "See, I knew you weren't actually vegan." It's like, "Well, you've been
That's a
starving
great
me."
yeah, that's a great
Yes.
parallel. Yeah, that's a very good one.
Yes, like, "You're starving me, so I'm gonna eat whatever you put in front of me."
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but yeah, what's great, though, is she catches herself and says no and, like, retracts her fangs.
Mhm.
She's like, "I don't want it."
Yeah.
So Sam picks her up and takes her into a different room, and Dean tells Gordon they have some things to talk about while he's, like, pointing his gun at him.
Mhm.
Then Dean says if he wants to get to the vampires, Gordon will have to go through him. So Gordon puts down his knife, and Dean sees this as a truce, which I did not. But anyway, Dean unloads his gun and puts it away, and then they start fist fighting. But Gordon is a dirty player, and he grabs his knife anyway and
Mhm.
goes to, like, slash Dean, but it doesn't matter, it gets knocked away. And then this is where, again, he tells Dean they are on the same side, and he's like, "Dean, you're a killer like me." And Dean doesn't think so, and he hits his head, like, against a window. And then as Gordon's, like, kinda knocked out, Dean is, like, walking him and hits his head on the door frame on
I thought that
purpose.
was so funny. I
And
was laughing so hard at it because Steve was just like, "Whoops."
and then Dean is not Dean, Gordon's like, "Ow," yeah, and then Dean's just like, "Whoops." It's just
It's
like,
just yeah, it's just perfect for Dean to be just a little like, "Fuck you," like a little extra "fuck you."
"Yep."
Like,
And
he
then
already has him in a headlock and just, like, bangs his head.
mhm.
It was so funny. It made me laugh so hard.
But now Gordon is tied up to a chair, and Dean is like, "We may be the same, but you're the one tied up to a chair." And then Sam comes back and he confirms all of the vampires got out of the house just fine. Dean says to Gordon to get comfy and they'll call somebody in a few days to come untie him. Dean says this is a goodbye and then punches him in the face, which knocks the chair backwards. And I'm like, that makes it easier for them to get out. But okay.
Potentially.
Yeah. But anyway, they're walking outside and they're leaving.
I love that, I real quick, I just
Mhm.
love that, he's just, like, sounds kinda, like, sad at first, he's like, "Well, I guess this is a goodbye," and then he's just, like, goes to turn away and then just clocks him. It was just like,
Yeah.
that's so funny to me because then he turns to Sam and just like, "Oh, I'm good now, we can go."
Yeah.
I was just like, "That's great."
Yes, it is.
Uh, this scene also was great too, I thought.
Mhm.
It's a nice
Yep.
one.
So now they get outside and Dean stops and he tells Sam to just like go ahead and punch him in the face. And he's like, I won't even hit you back. Just go ahead and punch me in the face.
Yeah, because he's trying to,
And
like, basically get even for hitting Sam earlier and being a dick earlier.
yeah, exactly. And Sam says it looks like Dean just went 12 rounds with a block of cement. So he'll take a rain check.
At least someone's caring about the concussive the
Yes.
concussions that the other brother's getting.
Oh my God. Yes. Dean says they should have never taken this job because it's messed up everything he's believed in, even though it's good they took this job then.
Because yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Because Dean says now he's wondering how different life would have been if their dad raised them to not kill things that didn't deserve it. Because his dad was like Gordon.
Yeah, he's like, "How many things did we kill that didn't deserve to die because they weren't killing people and, like, being mean?" You
Mhm.
know?
And then this Dean says Sam is a pain in his ass. And Sam says, Guess I'll have to stick around to be a pain in the ass then. And Dean
Mhm.
says, Thanks. He actually says thanks.
Yeah, it's huge for Dean.
Yeah. And it made me call back to the last episode when Dean was questioning why Sam was even staying. And now he's,
Mhm.
like, thanking him for it.
Yeah, because I think, like we were talking before, he's realizing that Sam's right, and he's to learn from Sam too now,
Mhm.
right? He needs to learn these lessons of, like, not everything's a monolith, not everything is black and white, everything is shades of gray, everything,
Yep.
including monsters, which is cool, which I really like because I think villains and, like, monsters like this that are shades of gray make everything so much more compelling.
Mhm.
Because now you might run into vampires that are your friends because they are good people, but just vampires. And, like, that's
Mhm.
cool. So, like, what else could they run into that could be friends? Like, like, it's
Yes.
really interesting. And it also sets up, I think, the rest of the series for eventually befriending, like, angels and demons,
Yes, exactly.
Because, like, Crowley is a demon and is a bad guy, but eventually he's kind of a good guy. Like, he's eventually kind of a protagonist instead of an antagonist,
And
which
then
is, like, interesting.
you see that with the angels as well.
Yeah, with, like, Michael being, like, an angel and thus a good guy, or, spoilers for the very last season, or God being, God, and also being the bad guy,
Yep. Exactly.
which I think is really cool.
It is. It does have a nice setup there with it. With our crime counter, this one is kinda hard. So they impersonated a journalist and a coroner's assistant, which could be 90 days to a year. It's just like all the other ones we've done where it's like, it really depends on what you're trying to do when you're impersonating these people.
I feel like the journalist one probably doesn't really impact anything because also anyone can be a journalist. If you have a fucking blog, you can call yourself a journalist, like,
Mhm.
so the journalist one I feel like is less of a big deal, probably at most the 90 days one, but the coroner assistant to go mess with a dead body is probably a little bit higher.
Yeah.
That one's
Yeah.
probably closer to the year
Yeah, that's
because
what
they
I
didn't
was
do anything to the body, but they still, like, went into a coroner's office and played with the body.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that was the crimes this episode.
Yeah, not much crimes.
No. So, for our ratings for story and pacing, we both gave it a 5.
Yeah.
We both really liked this one, which is just crazy to think because I listened to the official Supernatural podcast, and those hosts both agreed that this story was kind of lacking. They were just like the overall story isn't as compelling when you compare it to other episodes.
Huh, that's interesting because I
Yeah,
disagree.
I
Like, I think this
know.
one is a lot more compelling. Maybe because I like the philosophical conversations that this episode implies,
Mhm.
and, like, that whole looking for the shades of gray thing I think is really important, and I find that fascinating.
Yes, me
That
too.
humans can convince themselves to that these other group of people are just subhuman and thus can be murdered willy-nilly and it doesn't matter. And, like, that's, like, an interesting thing because it is steeped in our reality. So I thought that was,
Mhm.
like I liked that. And I also really thought this from a story pace, like a plot perspective, it really was an interesting, couple plot twists. The initial beginning, we're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, no, there's, someone murdering young women in the forest, like, that's bad, gotta go stop that guy." And then, oh, turns out, no, there was actually a vampire and the guy that was killing them, the good guy. And then turns out the good guy was actually the bad guy. So, like, I like the constant twist there. But yeah, I thought it was really cool that, they basically subverted the expectations a lot, like, multiple times because
Mhm.
they started at the very beginning of being like, young woman in the forest getting murdered by someone, gotta go that's the bad guy, gotta go stop them. And then they
Mhm.
switched it to being, "Oh, no, wait, that's the good guy. He's actually on your side. They were killing vampires." And then also switched it back to be like, "No, this guy's a psychopath and actually is the bad guy, and we gotta save the
Yeah.
vampires." So I thought the couple subversions there was really cool
Yeah, me too.
and well structured. I didn't think it
Mhm.
felt rushed either. The ending didn't feel rushed like most endings do. Granted, the
Mhm.
fight scene wasn't very long, but it still felt like good enough for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. For the monster lore, we both gave it a 2, and I want to say the reason I didn't give it a 1 is because it did kinda change up the vampire lore a little bit. Because 'cause we're like, "Oh, okay, they don't have to feed off of humans,"
Mhm.
but that's really all we got.
Yes, and I agree that was exactly my thought too. I was gonna give it a 1, but then I gave it a 2 just because they did the subversion of them feeding off of cow blood and, like, being good guys, but vampires, and the bad guy being, like, the hunter. So I thought that was a cool
Mhm.
that was just enough to bump it to a 2 instead of a 1 because we've already done vampires.
Yeah, exactly. Character development, we both gave it a 5,
Yes.
mostly for Dean and his character
Mhm.
development, um, and then, like, their evolving relationship with other hunters.
Yeah, and also with, like, Dean actually saying, like, "Thank you" to Sam for being a pain in his ass and, like, forcing him to
Yes.
grow is, like that's cool that he can recognize that tool too. So, like, I was like, "Yeah, that's great."
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely
Great
is.
character development.
Visuals and direction, I gave it a 4 and you gave it a 3. I thought it was all great, like, the effects and the atmosphere. I really liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was about average. Like, it was, like, normal. I really liked the way they did, like, the prosthetic head,
Mhm.
of the vampire with, like, the retractable fangs and stuff. I thought that was really cool. But for the most part, it was just, like, kinda normal. Like,
Yeah,
nothing that blew my mind, nothing that, like, was like, "Oh, that's bad." So it was just kinda bang in the middle.
that's fair. Emotional impact, I gave it a 4 and you gave it a 5. I probably could have given this a 5, but my first instinct was 4.
Mhm. Yeah, I give it a
Um,
5 just because, like I said, I really like the whole philosophical conversation that this episode invokes, and that,
mhm.
like, impacts my emotions like that too because, like, I feel for the vampires, like, they're just trying their best to survive, and then all of a sudden, these guys are just coming in and murdering them for no reason, just because they think of them as subhuman for, like, no reason, and it's like
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, it pulls those kind of, like, things pull up my heartstrings a lot, so
Mhm.
and, like, the emotional like, the growth of, like, Dean and stuff, it's like, I felt very good about him like, for him, and I was like, "Oh, that's sweet," and, like, "That's great that he's actually, like, learning and growing," and, like so it was very emotionally, like, charged in a good way for me, this episode.
Yes, it definitely is good. Rewatchability, I gave it a 3 and you gave it a 4.
Yeah.
I know I'm questioning my numbers now because 'cause I'm like, I could have given this one a 4 too, because it is fun. I would rewatch it.
Yeah, but that's, like, the fun of doing the numbers too, is just that's your instinct, like, at the beginning, right? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just gave it a 4 because I would watch this again over a bunch of the other episodes, so it went higher than a bunch of the other episodes, which were, like, fine. You to rewatch, right?
Mhm. The
So
cat, he's behind me. Alright, Salt and Zest. We both gave it a 2. There were some fun lines, but it wasn't amazing.
Yeah, this wasn't a fun episode like the last one was, a lot of fun. This one is a lot more it was a lot more serious of a topic and a
Mhm.
lot more, like, of a serious of an episode, and I think there was a lot of fun lines at the very beginning and a lot of fun lines at the very end, and that's kind of about it. And, like, the
Yeah.
references to, like, Silence of the Lambs, I thought was funny. But for the most part, there
Mhm.
wasn't any, like, crazy funny lines.
But yeah, that brings our average scores. Mine was a 3.57 out of 5,
Mine's 3.71 out of 5.
bringing our combined score to a 4.07 out of 5.
Yeah, so pretty good episode so far.
Mhm.
Let us know in the comments what you guys think, if you agree with our ratings, if you disagree, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Alrighty then, that brings us to the end of season 2, episode 3, Bloodlust. Thank you for joining us this week as we discovered that not all monsters are actually monsters. Next week, we will fight yet another goddamn vengeful spirit. So, whenever you're ready, we'll see you in the archive. Bye.
Bye.